and I'll be recording this session and getting that up onto the playlist so everybody can refer to that when they wish after today. So, in writing a letter to a client, look, it's still a formality that we do. Is we write letters. However, the vast majority of communication when it comes to writing is happening in emails. What we do in this subject is we cover the letter writing component, but basically you should be thinking about your emails in exactly the same way. Well, almost exactly the same way. Certainly, some of the components of an email are different than what they are in a letter. So here we've got our components of a letter: your address, name, title, address, etc. We don't always include that within an email, or certainly not at the head of an email, but we include it possibly as the signature at the end. So it is a really good idea for you to spend time in creating your own signature to go with the emails if you're setting up a business. Think about all this information that's included in the traditional letter, and then include that in your signature. But what we'll be working on within this subject is actually producing those letters. The other thing I really encourage you to think about for the production of letters is that you'll set up a template for yourselves. So you don't write letters from scratch. You'll write this first one, spend a bit of time on that, get that one all correct, and then keep that as your template. Don't produce the first one with the client's name, property address, and everything, and keep that as your template. I suggest deleting all the particulars out, and then including some red X's or something like that to show you these are the sections that need modification, because one of the problems with using a template from somewhere else is that you'll inadvertently include information that you shouldn't have included in your letter. So, having a look at letters, the components of that letter are your business name and address, and then your address, name, title in there. The reason they're laid out in that fashion is because of the location of windows on an envelope. So you want to line the recipient's address, name, etc. up with where the window is on your page. You've got to think about your letter broken up into 3 sections, because when you fold a letter to go into a standardized envelope, say we've got an A4 page, that A4 page gets folded like that to fit into our envelope. So you've got two folds in it. That front bit has to line up with the window on our letter, or on our envelope. You also need to include a date. So a date in any written communication is also very important, because it shows that this was when this communication happened, and this enables future reference for whether something has been superseded by any other communication. Another important aspect in terms of legality is, if you send anything through the postal service or snail mail, as it's also referred, the date in which it has been sent is the date at which that agreement took place. So the basics of contract law is that you require offer and acceptance. With real estate, if you have any dealings in real estate, the transfer of real estate, both the offer and acceptance have to be in writing. But for all other contract law, as far as I know, offer and acceptance may be verbal, with the exclusion of forming contracts with people under the age of 18. So you can't form contracts with people under the age of 18. But if I said, all right, Pooja, I'll offer you this mouse for $2, and you said, yeah, great, I'll buy that mouse for $2 from you, we automatically have a contract there in place. So it's a verbal contract for sale of the mouse. Now, I can't actually do that because this is not my property, and that makes the contract void because this is TAFE's property. So that would be a void contract. But if it were my own mouse, well then that would be a valid contract. And you've got to keep that in mind with your letters. If you are offering something and your client then accepts that offer, you have a contract in place. That date is important because it shows the initial date of that offer. So it dates our offer. You'll probably want to include a reference in there. So straight up, the recipient can see, okay, this is what this letter refers to. So it's this particular job. You also do that with your emails, of course. You've got that subject line. It's also, as you all know, it's incredibly important to keep your subject line in your emails. So straight away somebody knows what it refers to, and they go, oh, I'm going to read that this morning, or I'm not going to read that this morning. It's less important. And then specifically who you're addressing. So I'm expecting to see all of those aspects within your letters. Also, it's probably a good idea, look, if you feel so inclined, to create your own letterhead and start mucking around with stuff like that as well. I've had some fairly interesting letterheads and had a bit of fun with that with a few students as well. Roll with that if you wish. Then you start getting into the body of your letter. Oh, sorry, I'm sort of blocking your view of that. You can see that. Yeah. So, introduction paragraph. You're saying this is what we want to cover. Then you get specific about your details, and then you have your call to action. So you're saying these are the steps that you, as the recipient, have to take. So I said, this is what we're doing. This is specifically what we're doing. This is what you need to do. Then tidy it up. At the end, final salutations, any further contact details. I think it's also really good in letters, emails, etc. And you probably see that in my emails where I write down the bottom, if you require any further information or so, don't hesitate to contact me, blah blah blah. Well, I don't write it exactly the same as that in my emails. I'm a little bit less formal like that with the students we've got an ongoing relationship with. But yeah, within your letters, invite that further communication in case they have any queries. That's pretty much the extent of how to write letters in general. On the next pitch there, I've got main components of a business letter. So you can keep this as your checklist. So your address, date of writing, recipient's name, subject, greeting, message body, the closing, signature. That's right. Yeah, I didn't mention that in there. So letters have a formal signature. So you'll sign that yourself. So what we have to do within the subject, and I'll find the one. What is it? 111. So this is what we'll be looking at probably today or this afternoon once we've got our drawings sorted. So students to communicate with client to gain approval of drawings design prior to submission to council and inform them of the terms and conditions at this stage of the process. So you've got to educate your client a little bit about what's happening, and then also present them with all of your drawings, and you're wanting their approval on that. So this letter is to be a formal business letter layout. So that layout that I've just explained there. So set your letter out in that way. It is to be accompanied by a full set of planning approval application documents and drawings. So please, in your submission to Learn, include everything. So at the moment, with peer checking and the Building Designer Consult, we're looking more at the development of the plans. But you have to send everything to your client. So you send them your drawings, your application forms, your solar panel information, your bushfire report, etc. You send absolutely everything to them to check. Aspects that are to be covered. Set the letter out so client can sign to accept that the drawings are satisfactory and meet client brief. So I'll go through that in a minute. What I think is a good example of that, a good way to do that. Inform them of the factors involved should they wish to make alterations pre-planning approval, post signing the letter. This is probably where you most want to encourage them for making any changes. So you really want for them, if they pick up anything, if there's anything they don't want, if there's been any changes of mind, etc. in this process, this is where you want them to be making changes. Because if they go making changes after planning approval has been received, yes, it's possible, but it takes time. It soaks up a lot of time, it's a lot of hassle, and it's not a good experience for your client. So really you want to steer them in that process of, if you have any changes, please make them now. But you'll want to set out drafting costs and time costs. So you want to say, if you're making some changes now, it's going to cost X amount per hour for those drafting changes. Or that's your time cost. And then you might want to have a bit of a flagfall type fee there as well. So same as when you get in a taxi. As soon as you step in, if you want to go 100 metres, it'll cost you that small amount. I haven't taken a taxi in a long time, but it'll cost you that small amount, you know, $5 or something like that. But then if you go further than that, well then it's charged per time and distance. You'll probably want to do the same sort of thing. So you'll say, for any alterations to plan sets, it costs this, and then so let's say $150 plus $80 per hour or so for your time. So you want to have those two costs there. Then also outline payments required at this stage. So you say, we have done all this work up until this point. This is what the costs are up until this point. Outline the process. The process of submission. So you'll tell your client, right now nothing has gone to council. It's all, you know, after you've sent back that letter approving everything and everything's been included, then it is going to go to council. We'll hopefully receive that approval within 2 to 6 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks, as per information they've given us. And then also, it's got to add something nice. They're paying your wages, so all your communications should be nice, courteous, etc., and informative. What you want is you want to keep them engaged. So say that's where we are. If we can offer any further services, please let me know. So you're inviting that further communication and further employment. So I'll open up. I won't go through that first section. The section I did want to show you. So this is from another student who they've got their letter there, and they've referred then to the second page where they've got a table there. So documentation provided for client consent. So they've produced themselves a quick checklist of everything that they need to include to council. So it won't take long to produce such a checklist like that on Excel or something like that. So application for planning approval, power loan notification, certificate of title, soil report, etc. So they've done all of those things, everything that they had to supply to the council, and then they've got these boxes here: received and approved, and then they've instructed their client to say yes or no. Yeah, well, this is on the recording there, so you have access to this through the playlist. I reckon that's fantastic. If I was to improve that at all, I would possibly space this out larger, have another line underneath or a section somewhere for comments. So I think you don't necessarily have to have that they've received it. So that received, that is a way of essentially documenting that, you know, in a legal sense that they have received them. But then they're signing at the bottom. They're marking, you know, each one approved or yes or no, and they're signing at the bottom. That also does that same job. So I think having some space for comments is important, so they can say whether they approve that plan, yes or no, and if yes, there's probably not going to be no comments. But if they say they don't approve that, they get that opportunity to say, look, I really wanted this to happen with the fence, or I wanted that, or I wanted this, etc. And then, so sign, name, and date. So that also ticks those legal boxes insofar as they have accepted that drawing set as of that date. So they're referring to that communication. And then please can you include the Arborist report you received with return documents as we include these in the planning application, included or not included. And then she set out her drafting fees as well in that form to show this is where all of our fees are coming from, which I think is also an important piece of communication to your client, because if all they see is this total of $1,633.50, they're going to go, how did we arrive at that? You know, is that fair? They've got no idea. Whereas when it's all set out like this, that the completion of plans was only 640, the rest was all these consultant reports, etc. They go, oh, okay, well then, yeah, then we're getting a good deal here, and we're not getting ripped off. This is what things cost. So that's some suggestions I've got for that first letter. And if you can set that out like that for the first one, well then for project 2 and project 3, it's going to be super simple. You just plug in the details for that, and away you go. Following that, you're going to have to do, for this project 1, you're going to have to do another letter as well. And that's the same with project 2 and project 3. So once again, form your template here. This one, so these letters have formal business letter layout. So use the same layout, same address, everything like that as you did with the first one. Is to be accompanied by a copy of approval. So this letter comes after you've gained approval from the council. So council will have a look at the drawings, stamp them, send them back, and then you send this letter after you've got approval. So basically, this is almost a nicer letter to send, because you're saying, fantastic, you got approval for your project. Here are, please find attached the approved documents. Aspects to be covered: notify a client of achieving planning approval, inform them of the factors involved should they wish to make alterations post planning approval. So hopefully you've encouraged them to make any of the alterations they wanted to make earlier on, because you really want to steer them away from making changes now. But because you're providing a professional service, you don't close the door to that. So you say, yes, we can by all means make changes at this stage. However, there will be council costs involved, and I'd probably add to that those council costs also time. Say, look, if we're making a significant amendment to these drawings, that's going to take time for reassessment by council. There's going to be additional drafting costs. I think good to set it up in that same fashion as what you be consistent with that first letter where you said we've got this flagpole fee of X and then our time costs of X. And then really important aspect to include in this letter is offer further assistance with the next stage of development approval. So that's, you know, it's do you want fries with that sort of moment to say, right, we've done this bit for you, it's all worked, it's fantastic, we've done such a good job, we can do a good job for building rules consent for you. And then once, you know, and then once you're doing building rules consent stuff, then you can say, well, look, we know this project so intimately, we can offer project management of this project, or you keep offering to continue providing services if you want to continue to provide services. Not always will you want to continue to provide services. So sometimes some clients are really quite difficult. You'll find that they take up more of your time than what you can actually be reasonably charging for, and you know, and just to have reasonable business sense, it is almost as important to drop the bad clients as it is important to attract the new ones. That's always going to be something you have to work out yourself and assess yourself. But in the main, you'll want to keep growing your business and you want to keep taking on more work and offering to, or keeping the door open to those clients sending further stuff. So that's the next letter you'll be writing in that instance. So in terms of people doing planning approval, that's the two letters you have to write. That's your, so you set up those two templates. For the building rules consent people, I'll just go through that one as well. So yeah, same, everything, formal business letter layout, set out letter so client can sign in agreement with employment of your services, confirmation of brief, and providing approval for you to proceed. So as I mentioned before, in relation to contract law, it's about offer and acceptance. And what you're doing here is you're writing this formal business letter as the offer. So be very clear about what you're offering. Think about what you're offering, because basically you're setting the parameters for that agreement. You want to ensure that you get a contract in place for covering everything that you have to do. So basically, this is your chance to draft that contract. So you say, this is what we'll be producing. So you want to say, this is the project for which we'll be taking through building rules consent. This is the scope of our work. So we have to prepare the design as per the approved documents. So you've got planning approval, you're producing your building rules consent as per those documents, and then you're saying you are creating details, notes, and specifications to ensure that that building meets building compliance for assessment by either the council or private certified. So you'll be setting that up. So have a think about exactly how you want to define that project and say what you will be working on. So that's your important bit. So scope of work to be undertaken, define that scope of work. Confirmation of brief, client's requirements, service levels to be provided. So say that you are providing this service, and as at the point at which it is approved by the council or private certifier, that is the end to this engagement. But any services up until that point, you will be charging for. Process time frame of gaining approval. So you can put in indicative time. So you can say we expect this amount of time for this. However, subject to change due to changes in design, clients' wishes, other aspects which may not be foreseen. Fee structure, payments, so you can set out this is what we cost. So you might have a drafting cost for doing planning approval stuff, and you might have a higher drafting cost for doing your building rules consent. Building rules consent is far more technical, and it carries more risk with it. Like planning approval, there's really very little risk involved in that at that point in time. You're not actually building anything. Nothing from that is going to be built until it goes through this process. So you're taking on a bit more risk here. Once again, potential cost implications of changes designed at each stage of the building approval process. You'll be encouraging your client to be making changes early on rather than late. You'll be telling them that changes at this stage may require reassessment by council for planning approval. You'll be telling them that changes at this stage are still better than making any changes once works have commenced, because as soon as works commence on site and you're making significant changes, that may throw out your timeline. It may mean that you've got people booked in that you're having to pay for that are not doing work because they can't do work, etc. That's a real nightmare. You don't want to be making any changes once work has actually begun. And then signing to accept agreement. So, like with Neri's letter that I showed you there, so applicant's signature, name, and date. You want those two things, and then of course appropriate industry language and terminology is to be used, and add something nice. Yeah, they'll be paying wages. So once again, that thing of yeah, we'll be taking you through this process. If there's anything further we can do for you, please let me know. So you'll be doing that one with building rules consent. I think that's fairly much all that I felt I needed to add in regard to letter writing. Does anybody have any queries in regards to that? Fairly fine with it? Yeah, Pooja?
With building,
Yes.
like you show us, like we have to describe there what drawings or what reports we are adding.
Yes.
So with building approvals, do we need to give all these details as well?
Yes. Yeah. Don't go into huge amount of description in terms of saying I'll be producing wet area details which will look like this and they will have this and they will have this and this and this. No, just say wet area details. Yeah. So set out, I'd say, use dot points. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Say for building rules consent, we'll be covering these specific we'll be covering compliance to prepare your plan set for the private certifier or council. Within this plan set, we will be covering things such as footings detail, wet area detail, cross section, section detail, timber framing. Any other questions? Beyond that, I'd like to add, look, this can be as fictitious as you want it to be. Obviously use the address, the site address, 174 Shepherds Hill Road. But beyond that, yeah, look, be as fictitious as you want and muck around with things as much as you want.
Michael.
Yep.
Can we have access to that letter as an example? So not just walk through how to do it, or?
No, I won't give you that the student's letter.
Yeah.
No, I won't give you that. So look, this is it's a learning opportunity for you to develop these things for yourself, and then project one, it is a bit of a trial. You get a few cracks at things, and to meet the actual assessment requirements in this subject, look, if you meet those on project 2 and project 3, that's also fine. You've got to meet it twice. You've got 3 projects to do it. So have a crack at developing that yourself. See how you go.